A few years ago, I had a total meltdown. The chaos in my home, the constant sibling fighting of my 3 sons, and the frustration was just overwhelming. So there I was, tears streaming down my face, my heart broken in a million pieces, hiding in the one place that my husband and sons wouldn't dare to go, the floor of my closet. And I remember I wasn't just hiding from the mayhem though, but this overwhelming feeling that I was failing my son, that no matter how hard I tried, I just could not reach him. I'm Katherine. I've been a nutritionist for 16 years, and I'm a wife and mother to 2 beautifully neurodivergent beings. One, my husband, who was badly damaged due to his parents' lack of understanding, and the other, my son, who I have an opportunity to help through my nutrition education and a newfound understanding of how food affects developing neurodivergent brains. So today I'll share my family's journey with you, our missteps and our victories, and we'll explore together how food can affect children's behavior. But first, let me tell you what it was like. My son refused everything. He only ate 7 foods, and most of them were not good. He has texture sensitivities, so everything was yucky or gross, and meal times were a constant struggle. His anxiety and his mood swings were extreme. One minute he would be sitting quietly in the chair, and the next he would tackle his brothers. He would go from anxious to angry to sad to happy, all in the space of an hour, every hour some days. And I can't even tell you about our homework experience without crying. Connecting with him was very difficult. At times he would be distant, unemotional, self-absorbed, and even cruel. And I think that was the hardest part for me because I felt like it was my fault. But listen, I was raised by a strict father. I'm a military veteran, and my first degree is in aerospace engineering. I understand discipline. And no form of discipline was working on this straddle. So we confided in friends and family who convinced us to have him evaluated. And a few months later, I remember sitting there in this cold, sterile doctor's office when we heard the words that would change our life. Our 10-year-old son had been diagnosed with autism, ADHD, and OCD. And it's like the wind was knocked out of me. It was as if I had been trying to gather this puzzle in the dark for years, and suddenly someone turned the light on. All of the nonconformity and the struggle and the tears, it all made sense, and I was angry. And then I realized it meant that we didn't have to live like this anymore, and neither do you. See, my son's diagnosis sent me on a journey that led me to become a board-certified autism specialist and re-educate myself on how to support neurodivergent brains through nutrition. Neurodivergence includes autism, ADHD, and OCD, and others, and it can be highly affected by diet. Now, I know this is a bold claim, but there are foods that can worsen and amplify these symptoms, and others that can soothe them. I've been educated on nutrition from Cornell, Stanford, and Harvard University, and while this may challenge some common beliefs, the research is clear. Diet matters. So we're gonna ask some important questions today. Are common foods worsening our children's neurodivergent symptoms? Are there foods we can give them to support them? And most importantly, are there some simple, easy changes we can make at home to benefit our family's life? So by the end of my talk, I hope to share with you some key insights and some practical tools on how to support your neurodivergent child to their full potential. And it starts with what's on their plate. So I think the best place to begin is with something that makes up 70% of American kids' diets. And this is processed and ultra-processed foods and drinks. Wow. Well, at the end of a long, crazy day, what do we reach for? The kale? No, we grab those frozen pizzas like they're the answer to world peace, don't we? Or at least family dinner. And foods like this that are processed, they can be stripped of all of their nutrients. They can be loaded with sugars and artificial flavorings and dyes and colorings and preservatives, and they've shown to have some alarming effects. Are you aware of all the crazy things they can do? They can slow blood flow to the brain. They can impair focus. Oh, and my personal favorite, they can disrupt a child's ability to self-regulate. Wow. And they can trigger overeating that my son struggles with. And this is 70% of our kids' diets. What are we doing? Kids need whole foods full of nutrients, not processed foods. And this brings me to something that's getting a lot of attention in the scientific community right now, and that's the gut-brain connection. See, the gut is often referred to as our second brain because of how it affects our mood and cognition. It houses about 90% of our serotonin and 50% of our dopamine. That's our feel-good hormone. So what happens when the gut isn't healthy? Well, it sends distress signals to the brain. And that shows up as mood swings, anxiety, and difficulty focusing. Sound familiar? Man, we had a front row seat to this with our son. After eating certain foods, he would spin around like a helicopter and knock his brothers over. It was like he had lost all self-control in these moments. So how do we help our kids to build a healthy gut so they can manage these big emotions and boost their focus and attention? They need a diet that is rich in fiber. Now, fiber doesn't just keep us regular. It helps our beneficial gut bacteria to grow this strong microbiome. And sadly, kids today are only getting about half of the daily recommended fiber intake, and it's reflected in their behavior. See, fiber is easy to find. It's in whole plant foods. So when we load our kids' plates with beans and veggies and fruits and whole grains and nuts and seeds, we're not just feeding their tummy, we're fueling their brain and strengthening this gut-brain connection. When we committed to fiber-rich foods for our son, it made a remarkable difference. He started to show empathy. He would ask about our day, notice if we were upset or sad, even offer hugs, things that were rare before. So fiber is a superhero for us. Another key player, berries. Now, berries are true champions of brain health, especially for kids. We load up on strawberries, blueberries, and cherries in our house, and because of his texture sensitivities, we find it's best to just blend those into a smoothie. Nerd alert, 1 cup of blueberries can boost a child's focus and attention in just 30 minutes. Wow, it's like a little brain boost in a berry. See, berries are loaded with antioxidants, and it makes them great mood stabilizers and concentration enhancers. My son is calmer and more self-regulated these days. And believe it or not, his requests for a second dinner have completely vanished. Now, if I could just get his dirty laundry to do the same. Another crucial element to managing my son's symptoms are omega-3s. So we bypass fish because they can have high levels of mercury, especially common species like tuna fish. And if you're not aware, mercury is a potent neurotoxin. It can be dangerous for developing brains and even cause behavioral problems. So we go straight to the source with leafy greens like kale and chia seed and flaxseed, and we put all 3 of these into his daily berry smoothie, and he has no idea. It's fantastic. Sometimes we also give him walnuts and almonds, and we found that this consistent intake of omega-3s has made him more focused and emotionally stable. And the improvements to homework time, monumental. I'm talking calm, focus, and steady persistence. It's fantastic. So another concern beyond mercury and processed foods is particularly relevant to dairy products. And these are PCBs, or polychlorinated biphenyls. So PCBs are environmental pollutants. Basically, when an animal eats it, it gets stored in their fat. And these are dangerous for growing brains. They can cause cognitive impairments, developmental delays. Basically, you can think of it as the unwanted chemical in your kid's string cheese. So we avoid dairy as a precaution, but calcium and vitamin D are absolutely essential. And luckily, most plant-based milks and orange juices are fortified with these. You can get them in supplements. But fun fact, beans and leafy greens are loaded with calcium. They're so good for us. Is it easy to get my kid to eat kale? No. That's why we have to put it in a smoothie. But sometimes I'll blend up beans and pumpkin and I put those into his brownies. And he has no idea. I know what you're thinking. Is my kid going to eat this? Or is it going to end up in the waste bin? Start slow, be patient, and remember your child is worth it. Now, I know some people swear by high-protein diets, yeah? And to them, a steak is not just a meal, it's a religious experience. And it's true, there are diets that emphasize lots of animal protein and saturated fats, and then minimize plant intake. And you don't have to look very far to find people who are promoting these so-called experts. Just scroll through social media. But when it comes to brain health and cognitive function, the research, the science suggests otherwise. See, the challenge with these high animal protein diets is that they're loaded with saturated fats and cholesterol. They can create inflammation and disrupt our gut health. They can lead to heart disease later on, and they can even speed up cognitive decline. And I'm not the only one saying this. The Alzheimer's Association actually recommends that we eat diets low in saturated fats and high in fiber and plants in order to protect our brains from this terrible disease. They go even further to recommend berries and leafy greens as added brain protection. Now, parents, I know we have so much to protect our kids from, don't we? I remember researching the perfect car seat and the safest bicycle helmet for my 3 boys, but what are we doing to protect them from the greatest threat to their future? Based on the statistics, the biggest risk they will face as adults is heart disease. It's the #1 killer of American men and women. And sadly, neurodivergent people are in even greater danger. In 2023, a review was published in JAMA Pediatrics. Researchers analyzed 34 studies that included 274,000 people with autism spectrum disorder. And guess what they found? People with autism have a 46% higher likelihood of developing cardiovascular disease. A similar study was published in the Journal of Counseling and Clinical Psychology, and they looked at adults with ADHD. Researchers concluded that people with ADHD have a whopping 200% higher likelihood of developing heart disease. So if we know this is the greatest threat to our kids, and my neurodivergent child is at even greater risk, then the foods I feed him now and the habits that I'm helping him to develop can have a profound effect on his long-term health. So how do we protect them? The American Heart Association and the American College of Cardiology both recommend that we eat diets low in saturated fats and that are mainly plant-based in order to prevent heart disease. See, plants are protective against this terrible disease that claims 2,500 American lives every single day, disproportionately affecting people with ADHD and autism. So parents, when I ask you to consider your children's diet, I'm begging you to think about the long-term implications. I just have one last question for you to ponder. Have you ever thought about what it's like to be neurodivergent? To feel like maybe you're a little different than your siblings and your peers? You know, every time a child misbehaves or can't manage their behavior, they can receive negative feedback, right? Researchers estimate that children with undiagnosed ADHD will receive over 20,000 extra negative messages before they're age 12. Do you think that can affect self-esteem and their mental health? Absolutely. My husband, Matt, wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until he was 45. Growing up, he struggled in ways that neither he nor his parents really understood. Rather than being recognized for his strengths, he was often made to feel as if he was stupid. He shared a painful memory with me. One night, while struggling with his math homework, Both of his parents lost their temper. He recalls being called stupid, an embarrassment, useless. He was even threatened without supper if he didn't just try harder at the math. So he covered his ears and he put his head down and he cried, unable to understand what was wrong with him. And this scenario played out dozens of times throughout his adolescence, eroding his self-esteem and profoundly shaping the majority of his life choices afterwards. Matt's experience is a sobering reminder of what happens when neurodivergent children don't get the support they need. Imagine the millions of children struggling right now whose journey could be different with a little more understanding. Picture your home with your child more confident and self-regulated, where sibling bonds strengthen and chaos gives way to harmony. I challenge you this week, introduce one plant-rich meal. Maybe it's a Mexican quinoa casserole or a hearty potato pear stew, even if you have to blend it until it's smooth for your texture-sensitive kid like mine. And watch how small changes at the dinner table produce great shifts in mood, focus, and behavior. So from one frazzled parent to another, if you're looking for a little less chaos and a lot more peace, it really does start with what's on the plate. The possibilities are endless, and so is your child's potential. Thank you.